Like any child growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, my childhood included a very healthy dose of Lucasfilm, especially Star Wars and Indiana Jones. I watched the movies, read the books, and in the case of Star Wars, played the games. Oh, so many games. Indiana Jones, by comparison, didn't really have that many bangers when it came to games. Now, the obvious reason for this is the fact that the Star Wars prequels were coming out at this time, so LucasArts was pumping out the games like crazy in order to capitalize on this. The Indiana Jones franchise, however, wouldn't get its next edition until 2008 with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings did get a release in 2009, but that game was a bit of a letdown. So when I heard that we were getting a new game with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, I was most intrigued, especially when I heard that Machine Games, the studio behind the Wolfenstein reboot series, was developing The Great Circle. I was even more intrigued, especially when I saw that first gameplay trailer, as the game wasn't what most thought a modern Indiana Jones game would look like. Instead of being an Uncharted or Tomb Raider copy-paste game with an Indiana Jones skin, it's a first-person brawler, shooter, puzzle, adventure game? So when December 9th rolled around and the game finally released, I downloaded it and dove on in. So join me on my review of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Let's start with one of the game's many strengths, its visuals. Just, my god. The game looks like one of those tech demos done when a company unveils their new engine. You know, those showpieces where everything looks perfect and too good to be true. It's usually, some jungle scenery or some heavily congested cityscape. But here, it is true. It is insane how good this game looks. The details on the characters, the textures, the foliage, the water, the lighting, the reflections, it's all so insane. What's even more insane is the fact that the game runs so well. It is so refreshing to see a studio take time to ensure players have a smooth experience with regards to performance. So often nowadays, we have games that look half as good as The Great Circle does, but they chug along because their studios don't spend the time they need to on optimization. I was running on ultra settings with low ray tracing and getting a rock-solid 60 FPS at 1440p, running with an i9-12900K and a 3090, which, yes, is not exactly the cutting edge of PC technology nowadays, but it is an older-ish rig. The only times I really have a lot of frame dip was during a cutscene while something was loading in the background. In just about every other scenario, the game maintained a buttery smooth frame rate. The settings I went for with Great Circle are very similar to what I try to get out of most games. Ultra/high settings, 1440p, going for 60 FPS with little to no ray tracing. It is amazing how many modern games struggle to achieve this. And again, I'm not trying to go to 4K or anything. 1440p is usually a nice in between, but again, so many modern day games just they can't handle that. So Machine Games must be commended here. Not only does the game look good, it looks right. They got the look and feel of the Indiana Jones films down perfectly. You can tell that people who appreciate and respect the original movies worked on this game. Hell, the whole tutorial mission is literally a shot-for-shot recreation of the opening from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Troy Baker gives a nearly indistinguishable performance from Harrison Ford as the voice of Indiana Jones. Now, there probably is the question, well, Harrison Ford's still alive, why isn't he voicing Indiana Jones? Well, you see, in my opinion, it's actually pretty good that they got Troy Baker to do the voice of Indiana Jones here, because if you didn't see Indiana Jones The Dial of Destiny, the opening 20 minutes they have this sequence where they've de-aged Harrison Ford, but it's still him playing Indiana Jones. So it's kind of awkward because you have this young-looking Indiana Jones on screen, but then you have, an old Harrison Ford's voice coming out of his mouth. He sounds tired. He sounds, there's a lot of differences, little differences here and there between you when you're 20 or 30 years old versus you when you're 90 years old, right? So I think it's a pretty solid choice here. They went with Troy Baker, and there's times that you cannot tell the difference between the two, and after the first mission, it just sounds like him. So it's a phenomenal performance and does a great job for making the game feel right. The game also uses a lot of the same sound effects from the movies. The whip crack, the gunshots, even those meaty 1980s punch sound effects that every movie and every TV show that time used. Those sound effects where it sounds like they wrapped a slab of meat in a leather jacket and smacked it with a giant piece of wood. It's just so perfect. So as far as the visuals and presentation go, the game gets a perfect here. By the way, while I am running on ultra settings, the game can still look better if you have a NASA PC. I have ray tracing turned down as low as possible, but you can enable it, and even full-on path tracing if you want to get blown away even further by the game. I have ray tracing turned down as low as possible, but you can turn it up, and now even go full on path tracing if you want to get blown away by the looks of the game even further. It's just insane to me that is a thing now. But either way, the game looks, sounds, and feels amazing. So 10 out of 10 here. Keep in mind too, with the way the game looks on this video, YouTube compresses the hell out of videos. Even if you're watching in 4K, which I do recommend you do, it's still compressed quite a lot. So the game, when you have it running on your own computer, will look much better than what you're seeing on screen right now if you're running at the same settings as I am, at least. Alright, so let's talk about the story. Now, I don't want to give too much away about the story, which is why I'm only really using footage from roughly the first third of the game, but it's good. It's really good. The way the game opens up with Indy's college being robbed of a cat mummy by a literal giant working for the Vatican had me hooked right away. And if that sentence didn't just hook you too, why are you here? Either way, Indiana takes off after this giant and finds himself in a race with the Nazis to find an ancient artifact known as the Great Circle. It's a pretty standard Indiana Jones things at first, like Raiders and Last Crusade, but it quickly leans into that more occult/cryptic side of the franchise like Temple of Doom and Crystal Skull. The game had me constantly reminding myself that this is a franchise that has seen Indiana Jones fistfight Dracula with how hard it goes into the strangeness, which is absolutely great as far as I'm concerned. It's something that Dial of Destiny didn't do near enough, in my opinion. If I had to stack up the game story against the movies, I would put Great Circle right after Last Crusade, followed by Temple of Doom, Crystal Skull, and Dial of Destiny. So it's in the upper half of my rankings at least. The dialogue writing is also good. Indiana Jones sounds like Indiana Jones, not only because of Troy Baker's acting, but because he says things that sound like things Indy would say.
That really hurt.
You have any idea how old that was?
Enjoying the view?
Excuse me, Father.
Gallagher, is spying on people part of your daily nun routine, sister?
Was war das? Gott will nicht, dass wir die Stadt verlassen, Franz. Hör auf! War nur Spaß. Ist wahrscheinlich nur die miese italienische Technik.
He's joined by a great supporting cast of characters along the way, all who are competently voice acted and written as well. So yet again, high marks for the game here. Alright, so we've talked about the visuals, we talked about the story. How does the game actually play? Well, it's more of a stealth brawler than a first-person shooter. So most of the time you'll be sneaking around an open world level, piecing together clues and solving puzzles while trying to remain undetected. The stealth is very forgiving in most cases. You can completely bludgeon someone to death while their buddies are right around the corner, and in most cases they won't hear you. Granted, that happened in the movies more than a few times too, so fair.
Wein bei deinem Standgericht. Steh auf!
You can also acquire disguises to help you blend in and move around the world a lot easier. But there are areas where these disguises won't work, and there are officers around that will be able to see through your disguise that fool the grunts. so it's not all easy mode once you pick up a disguise. When it is necessary for you to resort to violence, most of the violence is done via hand-to-hand combat, which sounds weird at first, especially given that this is a first-person puncher, brawler, yeah. But it all clicks once you spend a bit of time with the game. You can swing right and left hooks, block and parry, push your opponents, and charge up your punches to break through their blocks. All these actions deplete your stamina bar, so you can't just spam these attacks. Now you can fortify your stamina bar by eating fruits, and fortify your health by eating other types of foods, so if you know you're going to get into a bit of a clash, you can, well, chow down in advance, but you still have to, of course, manage your stamina and take advantage of your opponent when they are open to attacks. While there are guns in the game, and you can use them, ammo is very sparse, and the guns are loud, extremely loud, and likely to bring every enemy within earshot down on your head, which is something you can't really handle. This isn't a game like Uncharted where you can mow down waves and waves and waves of enemies. I think Nathan's kill count is well into the tens of thousands by the time we get to Uncharted 4, so you gotta be smart and pick and choose your fight. So while you can use guns, you definitely want to use them sparingly. On top of your fist, you can pick up items in the environment and use them as weapons against your enemies, or use them to distract your enemies by throwing them. Everything from bottles, hammers, brooms, full-sized ancient warhammers, and even fly swatters, all with a variety of takedown animations and durability. Some weapons, such as clubs, can be used multiple times for stealth takedowns, while others, such as violins, can only be used once. It is a thing of beauty and leads to some absolutely satisfying and hilarious takedowns. Indy's whip can also be used to disarm enemies, swing across gaps, climb, and spook enemy guard dogs. All in all, while the combat does take some getting used to, once you do, it's a fun time. The puzzles you'll be solving along the way are also relatively simple, but unique and thankfully fairly non-repetitive. You won't be turning the same stone pillars like you do over and over again in Skyrim, and it feels pretty satisfying when you do solve these puzzles. As far as the length of the game, Machine Games claims it'll take about 12 hours to beat the game. That seems like a very conservative estimate, as I found myself at the 6-hour mark before I'd even left the Vatican, which is the first section of the game outside of the tutorial. You can easily dump well over 20 hours into the game just by doing some side missions, which there are, and a little bit of collectible hunting along the way. There are collectibles that are just collectibles, but there are quite a few collectibles that you can use to level up Indy. You can find skill books that you can use to level up his abilities, and as you find collectibles along the way, you will also be getting points that you can spend to unlock these skills. So just by naturally playing the game, I think you'll be easily dumping in well over 20 hours into the game. If you are a completionist, I think you're going to be closer to, if not over 30 hours. So overall, while the Great Circle has a relatively simple gameplay cycle of explore, avoid enemies, solve puzzle, punch your way out when you get caught, it is a satisfying and well-crafted experience. Clearly made by people who love the original movies, it's such a refreshing experience from the buggy, rushed, incomplete messes we're unfortunately used to in today's gaming world. Great Circle gets a 10 out of 10 for me. It's well worth it if you're a fan of Indiana Jones or a fan of the adventure action genre. It's on sale right now for $70 US. You can also pick it up on Game Pass as well, so great place to experience it there. So that is my Great Circle review. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you've played the game, how's your experience with it? Have you had a similar experience to me or something else? Let me know all that jazz in the comments down below, especially if you are a fan of Indiana Jones. Hope you guys have a great Sunday and a great rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.